Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Aggregators and Brands show. And today I have Jeff, and he has great experience about aggregators and also like with brands and the e-commerce. Welcome, Jeff, to the show.
Thanks, thanks for having me today. We're excited to be here.
Absolutely. So can you please tell a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Yeah, actually, so my background is mostly in retail. After I got my MBA in Chicago, I spent 20 years in retail. I was a buyer for CVS and Staples stores, and then I was selling products into stores like Party City and Michael's and so forth. And then really just started doing Amazon FBA about 6 years ago. Worked for a big brand for 3.5 years, and then for an agency for almost a year, and then for an aggregator for almost a year as well. So sort of have had done many different roles in the Amazon world. Plus, on my own, I had retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, private label, wholesale, you name it. I've tried it and worked in it. So I've been around and get to know the industry pretty well.
Hey, it's really great, the experience that you have, especially retail, which I'm going to come later on because I'm seeing now a new trend. Again, the Amazon sellers also looking how they can be present on retail too. But before that, as you know, we kind of start always talking about the aggregators. And what we are seeing in the market from starting from the summer is last 4 or 5 months, the aggregators are a bit in a silence mode. And we have seen maybe 10 to 15% staff reductions across the board, both in the US as well as in Europe with aggregators. We don't see too much of a fundraise except a few of them, but not really much going on with raising funds. We don't see new aggregators. So that's kind of like my view, but we'll be very happy to get your view on the aggregators market.
Yeah, I can only speak from my personal experience and people I know personally, so only touching a small microcosm of the whole industry. But yes, staff reductions in aggregators is very real. I've also know for sure that many aggregators have reallocated resources, so people that used to go out hunting for deals are now on the operations side and managing the companies. I have heard of deals still being closed. There's still acquisitions being made. I've heard that pretty clearly. It's certainly much slower. I know at the Prospect show back in March, there was a whole bunch of us there, lots of aggregators, all looking for lots of deals. And in the last couple of shows, I haven't seen that many aggregators actually presenting, and haven't heard about the deal flow being as high as it was. I've heard rumors in the industry that multiples are much lower. And in talking to some big sellers that are considering whether they should sell or not, when I ask people, I hear a lot of, hey, now's a good time for me to build and sell later. As you know, the acquisitions are based on SDE, which is basically profits, and a lot of them believe that they can get bigger now. It seems to be that funding is plentiful and pretty cheap. So places that were concerned about raising money for inventory and expansion plans seems to be easier to get those funds, and I do see some of that happening. But I know it's a challenge for sure to run an Amazon business, and as an aggregator to run several dozens or even more businesses at the same time at scale, just because each business has its own unique needs. It's not a one size fits all. So that's sort of my perspective. But I know that there's a lot of people out there either that have just left or the aggregator space and are looking at new opportunities potentially.
That's right. So that's also kind of what I am seeing in the market. Like we work with a couple of brokers, like they refer to us new customers, and I see kind of a increase in the number of customers referred to us. Why? Because like when they start talking about the exit strategy, kind of they switch. Like majority of the people now are focused on building and growing so that they can sell later, maybe when the market is in a much better condition. Because I see the multipliers around like 3 even less, and a lot of people want to still get to that 5, 6, 7 multipliers in the future. So that's a very good point. The other thing is, like you mentioned a few things about the aggregator model, and I don't want to ask it as a kind of a very simple question, is this a good model or a bad model? But what do you think it works with like a roll-up company model versus with all that brands in under one umbrella, and what doesn't work? So how do you see the future?
The first thing I think we need to establish is the difference between brands and sellers, right? I mean, selling products on Amazon, which is a perfectly fine way to make plenty of money, is one thing, but building a brand in the traditional sense of brand is something different. You know, a brand has a promise, stands for something, it means something, people are searching for it. So they're two different things. So rolling sellers up with brands is difficult. Look, each company is different on Amazon, but if you have a bunch of like companies and you put them together and build a brand around them, well, that makes sense. That certainly could be something. You know, in the aggregator space, there's a lot of criteria upon which to evaluate a potential acquisition, but I believe that if you boil it down, they're really looking for a moat, right? They're looking for a product that has a moat around it, and that could be a loyal fan following. It could be thousands and thousands or 10,000 reviews, or something that sort of protects that company from being staying at the top of the search results. So if, for example, an aggregator buys a couple of really keystone items that are have a moat and they're at the top of the search results, and then can introduce lots of other products around that, or buy other acquisitions that are complementary to it, then it certainly makes sense. But it's hard. I know we're all selling on Amazon, but as you know, like, it's different. So buying one company that does one thing and one company that does another thing, and then 10 more that do all these different things, putting them together, it's not necessarily the same skills and the same actions to get them all to the same place. Some of them need pricing, some of them need optimization, some of them need advertising, some of them inventory is the key. So it's not as simple as it may sound to roll up, but there's certainly efficiencies to be had. I know that's not a clear answer that you had asked for, but it depends.
Exactly. Yeah, it very much depends. Maybe like, I mean, my thinking was there are two areas that I haven't seen that synergy is happening too much. One of them is the supply chain. Like every single brand comes with their own supply chain, and I see a lot of aggregators struggling to consolidate that. And the second is I didn't see too much of a product innovation, although I was like, I was in the Helium 10 show, like watching the Trustio case about the Angry Orange, and I've seen that like they already improved the way that the products and you know, like kind of like work, and also the packaging and everything. So that was really kind of a good news, and I think that's the reason why that Angry Orange was really a good success. But I haven't seen too much of a product innovation going on across the board. It's more about like putting more money, more resources, and try to get things done. What's your view about that product innovation piece?
Well, introducing new products is certainly a crucial part of the aggregator model, just like it's a crucial part of the Amazon model. Variations are obviously easier, and I see a lot of activity around variations just because they are easier. But it's a different skill set, right? I mean, if you think of like a traditional P&G, Unilever, J&J big company, like there's a product development innovation team that does that. And when you're an aggregator, if you don't have that function, you can't ask the person who's also managing operations to also come up with new products. It's a completely different skill set and different side of the brain working on that. So I do see some innovations coming out of some of the aggregators acquisitions. Also, a lot of the acquisitions that I saw, the founders had all these great ideas, right? They were launching new products every year, and they have a whole pipeline of new products. And sometimes they didn't have the funding, the resources, the people, the supply chain, the expertise to bring them to market. So the aggregators that include the founders still involved, whether it's on some type of consulting or other arrangement, tend to benefit, because then the founders can say, well, we tried this, or we wanted to do this, and we just didn't have the resources to do it. And now the aggregator, who's has more resources and can be more effective at scale, can bring some of those things there. But I agree that bringing new products is certainly a key focus, and has to be talked about in a big way.
Absolutely. So maybe a final question about the aggregators. So what's your feeling about moving forward with that model? Do you think it will just coexist with the brands and aggregators, or are you expecting something different in 23?
My prediction is there'll be fewer larger aggregators. It's if you're doing something at scale, let's say you're implementing a inventory system or something, that's a one-time fixed cost. And when you have 1,000 ASINs or 20,000 ASINs, I think that cost is pretty similar. So I would imagine it would be challenging to be a small aggregator in 2023. And there's a lot of other things that can be done at scale, so the larger ones. But as a business model, it has to be specific and strategic. I believe that a lot of aggregators were buying companies based on the financials, right? It made sense. The numbers all added up, and on a spreadsheet, it looked great. But if it doesn't strategically fit into the portfolio, I think it's more of a challenge. But buying a bunch of companies strategically to build something around it certainly does make sense. So there may be some moving around. I can't imagine a bunch of new aggregators launching like we saw in the past 12 months. But I could see more consolidation or acquisition coming up shortly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm also looking for it. I didn't hear much yet, but I'm very keen to see that there will be a few consolidations in the next few months. I
Yes.
think, like we talked really, I mean, thank you for the insights. That was really great. I mean, all about the aggregators and the future of that business. And we always kind of think, of course, we focus on the brands, and all the brands now are laser focused to be successful in Q4. What's your view now with the Amazon market? And maybe we can talk about the 23 strategies for the brands.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask you a question first?
Sure.
Do you think it's harder or easier to be a seller, in 23 than it was in, I don't know, other years, taking out the COVID spike? I've heard and I've seen it certainly takes more effort, more optimization, more advertising, more everything. But yet there's these amazing tools and software and agencies that you can outsource things that didn't exist in recent years. So what's your thought? Is it easier or harder now going forward?
Right. I mean, that's a good question. Like it's sometimes I have another question. It's more kind of a philosophical one. Is it like if we think about the people in the world, they're like more good things happening or bad things happening? I think, sometimes I think about it like it's like more than half of the people are bad people, or they're like good people. So it's like I think it's getting harder and it's getting easier. The thing is, it depends from where you look at it, and where you look at from. And as you mentioned, like for example, there was no EVA like 3 years ago, and we did a lot of things in the market. Like I'm just talking on our side, and we, for example, one of the things we did was, for some certain services, we reduced the costs almost by 50% in the market. Now, it means that like the brands will benefit from that service just because EVA is doing that now for 50% for better rates. But at the same time, it's a balance. Like you spend less on one service and you need to spend more on the other service, because what happens today is like there's more people in the market, but there is more products and there is more consumers too. Like the number of Prime members are also increasing. Amazon is growing globally. So I think there is a balance. It's not like easier or harder, but I think if the Amazon seller is smarter, then there are more opportunities to be successful. Because there are the tools, as you mentioned, and the services. It's just a little bit harder to find them. and there is more competition, so you need to differentiate. But as soon as you differentiate, you can have a much better result compared to maybe 6 years before.
I agree with you too. I made the shift from brick and mortar retail to Amazon mostly because I love data-driven solutions. And in retail, like you don't know necessarily how many people walk down the aisle, how many people pick up an item and put it in a shopping cart and then decide not to and abandon the cart. But in e-commerce, we have all that data. So and now we have access to even more of it, either from Amazon, which is great, and then also with all these tools that are doing calculations for us. So I think you have to be smarter, but that's better for you and for your product and for your brand and for your consumer. So I agree with you, but I like your comment about perspective. It all depends on if you're how you're looking at it. Makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see, for example, I see more opportunities every day. One of the things that's just like that was just very impressive, because I also look at like the data about the trends, because we monitor around 20 million products on Amazon, and like 5 million of them are in the CPG space, because it's kind of very interesting for us, like what the CPG brands are doing. And I see more and more, for example, people are searching for like plant-based drinks, like plant-based weight loss drink without caffeine. And I'm like super interested, because like weight loss is also kind of like an area which I'm always interested, like because I consistently fail, and I always kind of interested like what the people are looking for, and I look at the Amazon data. But it's so fascinating. And then you see, like, if you have that product, like, I mean, I already see the search trend. Like, I already see that. If the product satisfies the trend, I mean, this is great, right? Like, there is no way in retail to know about something before it happens, because everything starts with the search in a way.
Right. I would say the big difference in retail and e-commerce is timelines. In retail, you have to plan further in advance, right? I sold Christmas candy in stores, and in January you start analyzing post-mortem on Christmas candy. February you start talking to manufacturers, and by March you pretty much made commitments and decisions by April, and then the stuff's made in China and is shipped over and gets to stores. Like it's literally 1 year from when the season ends. You're planning ahead, and you can't wait for in e-commerce for search volume or in retail for trends. You really have to take a stab. We in the old days we'd go to a lot of trade shows and we'd sort of see what people were doing, and there were certain people that spotted trends. Like we paid a company that would go to Helsinki and Tokyo and tell us what the cool colors and patterns are, and you sort of had to make some leaps of faith there. But I think in the Amazon world we all have to start thinking much further ahead. So I love that we're talking about 2023 and those things, because it's not a last minute. I think people definitely plan ahead in Amazon, but in general, the thought model is start planning even further ahead. What's the 1 year, what's the 3 year, and take a stab. Like plant-based is certainly a trend that's here and is expected to grow. And instead of waiting for a search term, I think people have to sort of take a leap of faith of, where's plant-based going and what can I do in that area in a big way to leapfrog other people that are just more closely following today's trends.
That's right. And the technology is improving so fast. I mean, that's another thing. And some of the Amazon sellers, they are not like the best with the tech. But I really believe that, the ones who are very successful, they know how to use the data and the technology. And one of the things about, for example, me and my co-founder, Barry, and we are both computer engineers, and we had absolutely no idea about anything when we started like Amazon business, like about retail or e-commerce, except like, maybe we deal with like big retailers from a tech point of view. Mm-hmm. And at some point, it was 3 years ago, I mean, that was so interesting, but I asked one day, like, Barry, what are you selling? Like for a specific, like there was a category, and he was like, he doesn't know, because he's just like, following what the data cell tells him to sell. I mean, that was a retailer business, reseller business, and he doesn't know. He was just like following the AI to decide, what to do. Now the things are getting even more interesting, especially with Amazon now positioning the marketing stream. Just like 2 weeks ago, we started the real-time bidding on Eva. So our teams are working on this real-time bidding, which means like in the morning, maybe the trend is like the conversion is more, the sessions are more, maybe conversion is less. Then you have a budget for the day, and the system will kind of start spending maybe less budget because the conversion is less. But as the conversion is increasing, the budget is increasing. I have seen that yesterday in real time for the whole 24 hours. I kind of like watched it, how the things work. I mean, it's a totally different ball game compared to just check the data yesterday, check the data like a week ago. And I remember like a year ago, we're talking about day partitioning, which is more or less like deciding what hour of the day to spend how much money. And everybody was thinking, oh, this is amazing. But it was not based on the data. It was more based on estimation, like that, hey, it's much better to do this at 6 p.m. But right now, it's like based on the real data, we are able to change the things. And then when I see it, I'm just thinking, wow, the impact of that in 23, it might be at least 10 to 15% better optimization. So here you go. There you
For
go.
the people with the tools. Now, let me ask you a question on all these software tools. What is the difference between AI, machine learning, rules-based? I mean, does the software just have a bunch of sort of if-then statements, or is it actually truly learning patterns and able to predict?
Oh, our kind of show is kind of becoming the secrets of the real AI. Like, what is this AI thing, right? And we talked about this briefly, right, in Vegas in one of these shows. And I mentioned that I was graduated at 99 from computer engineering, and my thesis was also about AI. So I was very much into AI. Which started around 1973, 74, and there was like 2 languages at the time, which is called Prolog and Lisp, like to mimic like the human behavior and try to kind of create the robots and things like that. The problem in the 99 was the cloud was not there, and the processing power was not good enough. And it was so expensive. So when it was like 2010, what changed was like with the introduction of AWS and Oracle, Microsoft, Google Clouds, it became really easier, cheaper, accessible to run the machine learning algorithms, which is the foundation of AI. So you can think about machine learning as a subset of AI, where the algorithm is learning from the past behavior. So if the algorithm, for example, so basically the difference between the rule-based and the machine learning. The rule says if X equals Y, do this. And that never changes, right? It's always like, kind of like the rule is executed as soon as long as the statement is satisfied. Where in machine learning, the result is also important, because sometimes the result is A and sometimes the result is B. Now, based on the result, the system is learning and updating the rule, like updating the probability of which result will, based on the result, updating the rule as the probability of one result to another is changing as each time the rule is executed. That's kind of like the difference. So it's like a person, like a baby who learns not to touch the fire, but the first thing is like you touch the fire, and then you're like, okay, now I shouldn't touch the fire. But next time you touch the fire, and maybe it's not a right example, but it's something that is hot, but you still think, maybe I shouldn't touch it, but maybe you touch it and now it's not that hot. Okay, now I can touch it now. I mean, like to the T. So it's like kind of a learning process. So is it applicable in AI? Like, I mean, we have seen so many tools, right? It's all about AI driven. It is applicable when the context parameters are all known, because if one of them is not known, it's very tough. Like it's very difficult because it's not easy to implement like because the AI works based on the data, but if the data is not complete, then the decisions are not complete as well. So you need to have all the parameters into this like data lake or data warehouse, whatever you name it.
Yeah.
So one of the things about advertising, for example, and we are pretty deep into that right now in EVA, with Advanced being an Amazon Advanced partner. For example, you don't know the impact of the image optimization, or or the text, to the conversion. So because of that, like not all the parameters are in when you do that advertising calculations. So it still works, it makes sense, but it's not always having the right results. That's why I believe it's a combination of like art and engineering, and you need to have the PPC specialist and the AI powered tool or rule-based tool working together delivers the best results. That's what we see right now.
And without taking advantage of the tools available in the market, it's you're at a disadvantage, right? I mean, the stuff moves so fast, and a lot of other people are using it. So I agree, it's important to have a human in there, and there's so many factors. Even though they say, hey, you only change one thing at a time, like you can't control your competitors change price or new competitor launch. Like there could be so many factors going on to affect your change in your performance that the machine might not be able to pick up on. But yeah, having that balance is really the key to success for brands. They have to heavily follow the tools to get the quantitative advantages of the fast moving metrics and to track the data. I mean, just the reporting alone is overwhelming. But again, there's simple tools that do that, and then just having someone who understands merchandising, marketing, and business to interpret, analyze, and then test. I know in my Amazon time, I constantly had tests going. You try and test one thing at a time, but it's so easy in Amazon to put a test out there for a short period of time or a long period of time, whether it's an official manage my experiments through Amazon or PickFu, or just tweaking something on your own to get data. We did this in retail all the time, and on Amazon it's even easier and quicker to get the results to see what's working and what's not. It's the vast majority of the Amazon consumers who are not sellers don't even understand this stuff, right? They just assume the price is the price. They don't realize that the price could change in an hour or a day or even shorter. So it's amazing what sellers can do these days.
Yeah, even like every 2 minutes, right? Like, I mean, like we are already doing this test a few weeks ago, right? I mean, so when I show that like the price can change every 2 minutes, I mean, even I am like fascinated with that, like price changes, like for example, what we do in EVA, because which creates almost like a stock exchange, like demand is increasing, price is increasing. I mean, like it's very non-traditional way of thinking and making money, because I know that, for example, when I talk to the CPG brands, like I see more like a traditional approach. Hey, the price should be the same all the time, but then when I explain that that's not even the expectation of an Amazon seller, 99% of the time, the Amazon consumers, or they don't like care if the price is the same, but they do care about, like, at the time they are having that buying decision, it has to be relevant, like to the market, not like, hey, 6 months ago your price was that. I mean, nobody's expecting that with houses even, right? Why with CPG products, right? I mean, even with the property, the price is changing every month. And why should the people expect that whatever bar needs to be always $1.99, you know, like that's not the case, right? So
Right.
yeah, but I mean, it's a great conversation. It's already, you know, like we had some great insights for aggregators and brands. So thank you very much, Jeff. But maybe like as a final question, so as 23 is approaching, what would be the top 3 things that you would advise to the brands for 23?
I would say the right combination of tools and humans, like we just talked about. It's crazy to do this without tools, or to give it all to a tool. Both those things to me seem crazy. Testing is really important, and innovation, relevant innovation, right? I mean, like really understand the consumer. And I know like there's millions of podcasts where people just talk about, hey, you have to know who your customer avatar and understand like what magazine they read and who they are. That's hard, right? I mean, like we're so far removed from the people that buy our products on Amazon, and we can't even talk to them. We don't even know their name and their email most of the time. But by reading reviews and trying to understand it's really the person who can understand what their consumer is and what they want and what questions they're asking, and then innovate towards that consumer. Those are the ones who win, because they build a brand around that. And I'm not saying it's easy, but in 23, I think that's really where we have to focus on.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for the advices, and thank you for joining the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.